Just to serve as a reminder, the Michael Brown case began to unfold, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund issued a letter to Attorney General Eric Holder asking him to look at several similar incidents in other states, and also asked Holder to urge police departments to take an additional step towards accountability, such as including body cameras. Janel A. George is the Education Policy Counsel for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and she joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to Arise America, Janel. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell me a little bit about this wider pattern. I would imagine that you all were not necessarily surprised by the developments in Ferguson because you were already looking at similar situations across the country.
Yes, what happened in Ferguson is really reflective of a lot of systemic and deeply rooted issues that are really manifesting themselves all around the country. We're seeing similar instances, in Los Angeles, in Texas, all around the country, and also not just recently, but in the past few decades, these kinds of incidents have been happening, but they're really rooted in tension, anxiety, and distrust between the community and law enforcement officers who should be serving and protecting them.
So the Legal Defense Fund sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking for more action. Can you be a little bit more specific about what you want to see DOJ do?
Sure. So the Legal Defense Fund highlighted three main points in the letter. The first was to conduct a full investigation, a broad investigation, national investigation about incidents involving police assaults and killings of unarmed citizens with a focus on African Americans. Secondly, to implement more broad training on implicit and explicit bias, which really underlies what we're seeing, and to start conditioning granting of federal funding on implementing this training so that localities have an incentive to train their police officers and implement new best practices that really reflect ways to de-escalate situations when they're interacting with the community. And so that we don't have these same situations that rise to this level. And finally, the letter asked for implementation of body cameras. Again, this lends itself to transparency, to accurate reporting, and also gives us evidence in cases like this. And also, even if officers are in situations where they feel they were not at fault, it gives them evidence to show what actually occurred.
Do you have a sense of how much support on the local level, local and state, because there's so much influence and control as it relates to law enforcement on the local and state level, that would support these actions, these initiatives that you're asking of the DOJ?
Right. I can't speak to the views of the local and state law enforcement on the ask in the LDF's letter to the Department of Justice. One thing that I do want to just make a point of is this letter is just one component of solutions and responses to what happened in Ferguson. I think that the long-term solutions will be community-based and locally based. They have to be appropriate to the community, to the population that's actually affected, and also have the legitimacy and the mark of those who are in the community in order to be sustainable. And so what works in a Ferguson might not work in a Los Angeles. So we really have to be cognizant of that in terms of crafting solutions.
So what's the next step? What's the way forward as you know, temperatures seem to have cooled, and I'm not talking about the weather in Ferguson. Right. What's the next step?
Well, I think that that community input and that community voice is key to the next step. So the next steps are not just waiting to see what happens or waiting to see what the federal response is. LDF has a long tradition and history of working with communities and sometimes taking years to really build long-term sustainable solutions that are community-based, community responsive, and appropriate to address a lot of these systemic issues. For instance, Ferguson is dealing with economic disparities. They're dealing with educational disparities. There are a wide range of issues that really call for a long-time strategy and really call for more input and dialogue with members in the community who have lived there and been there and have a sense of what will work and what will not work.
Indeed. A lot more to talk about, but we'll have to leave it right there. Janel George, thank you so much, Janel.
Thank you.